Some of the illnesses that we see when the seasons change include heat illness. So, we've had a nice cold, dark winter that's been very long, so we're not acclimated to the heat. The body goes through certain physiologic changes to manage body temperature, and it has to do with sweating and how early we start sweating, because sweating and evaporation is our main mechanism for maintaining our body temperature. So early in the spring, when weather starts getting warm, people are out there, they're working outside, or they're playing sports, and it's really easy to start falling into the trap of what's called heat illness. So I think everyone knows the term heat cramps. It might be outside, maybe you're working out in the garden all day, or you have construction workers working on a hot roof, or you're an athlete and you're out running and you start getting terrible cramps in your legs, or in your arms or in your body, and these are often known as heat cramps. So a lot of that has to do, one, with hydration, but two, with electrolytes like salt or potassium. So ways to prevent that is to ease into an activity. Just because you remembered a year ago you could do this many miles or work for this long in the heat doesn't mean that you can do it now after a winter off. Hypothermia turns into a challenge too, and we see this every winter. I'm an emergency physician by training, so where we see hypothermia a lot are in, unfortunately, our vulnerable populations, in our homeless, or people who might be drug or alcohol addicted and who just don't have the mechanism to get themselves out of the cold. And the other vulnerable population are actually the elderly. A lot of them are on fixed incomes, or might have some dementia and just don't recognize the signs of being cold. So we had several older people coming from their homes where the heat wasn't on. I'll tell you about one of the cases we had once a few years ago of a patient who actually jumped off the Whitestone Bridge. So this was in the wintertime. I mean, that's a high jump. That's 100 feet plus, and it was someone who was attempting suicide, but lived, but came in very hypothermic from the water. So just in training, just knowing the wilderness aspect, going, every piece of wet clothing we have to get off, because the presence of water on your skin or wet clothes will prevent you from warming up adequately. And actually being in cold water versus cold air strips your body heat away a lot faster. One of the physiological effects that occurs once you start warming somebody up is your body always tries to preserve its heat centrally, kind of the heart, the lungs, the brain, and it'll clamp down all the blood vessels in the extremities. It doesn't worry so much about sending blood to your arms or your legs. Once you start warming somebody after they've been hypothermic, the blood vessels in the arms or legs start warming up, but all that cold blood gets shunted, gets pushed back into the core. And by doing that, your body temperature actually drops again. So even though you start the warming, you might at some point have a period where the body temperature drops. So unless you understand that might happen, it could be really disconcerting as a healthcare practitioner. And that's actually when we were treating this patient, that actually occurred to this patient, and our trauma team got really upset, didn't know what was going on. I'm like, listen, this is called afterdrop. This is to be expected, and we're just going to manage this with more aggressive heating right now.